Okay, we are recording. Looks like people are still signing in, but I would like to just start on time and let people count on that in the future. So, welcome everyone to Monday, Crazy Mondays. I hope your days are starting easily. The minutes approval is the first thing on the agenda. And I just sent the minutes out about 9 o'clock this morning. So hopefully people had time to look them over. If not, I can give you a few minutes now. Did anyone that had a chance to look over them see anything that needed to be changed or clarified?
I very briefly looked. I didn't see anything.
And I looked at them
Okay.
about a month ago, but I didn't see anything that caught my attention that needed to be changed or addressed.
All right. Well, if there are no objections, will someone move to approve the cataloging committee meeting minutes from April?
I will so move. This is Dia.
Thank you, Dia. Do we have a second?
I will second.
John is doing a second. It's been moved and seconded. If there are any objections, please comment in chat or speak up now. Otherwise, we will call them good. All right. The minutes from April's meetings are approved. They are available on the webpage if anyone needs them. Before we get started with the items that the mentor committee put together, wanted to check in with everybody and see if anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, anything that's come up recently that they need to talk about. Nobody? It was a quiet month for everyone? All right. I did have one addition that Harry Stokes wanted me to bring up. He recommends removal of the daily notice on the catalog that says holds may take longer to fill due to library closures within the Sage library system. Does anyone have any opinions on that?
Seemed like Beth said something at one of our last meetings, the mentor meetings, that she was going to do that. I think she's just not gotten to it yet.
All right. Is Beth here today? Got a long list of
I know there's an admin, but I don't know who admin is.
Okay. Well, are there any objections to removing that notice? Sounds like a lot of libraries are getting open now, so I will just forward this to Beth to add to her list. We'll call it taken care of. All right. So under new business, there were some nice little tips that the mentor committee wanted to relay to everybody, and I'm going to open up my cataloging here.
Can I ask just for the minutes? Sorry to single out, but HRCLD staff windows. Can you just send a chat to me, or just let me know who you are so I can record your attendance?
Oh yeah, that's me, Sarah Samuels. So I'm signed in on my phone to hear you guys because my computer doesn't have speakers, but also on my computer so I can see better.
Okay, no problem. Thanks.
All right, thanks.
All right. So let me get rid of this chat window here for a second so I can see the whole page. I just pulled up a record for an audiobook. Can everyone see my screen all right? You should be seeing on the Palm Beach Murders MARC record. Can anyone see it? Do you?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes. Sorry.
All right, so when you're cataloging and bringing in records, there are these great validate link buttons here. There are these kind of blue squares with it, looks like a chain link in it. And they'll help you check to see if your authors, you go down into your 650s, they'll also help you find out if those 650s and 655s are in our authorities. If you go up, so that's one way to check and use those validate buttons. Another way is if you click up here next to the save, there's a button that says validate, and it will show you if, it'll put a little black check mark if the 650s are correct in our authorities, and it'll turn them red if you need to look them up. So those are just some tips in there. There are also drop downs. If you right click on some of your indicator fields, not all of the indicators. Right now I'm doing it on the 336, 337. They will give you helpful hints on what you need to put in there. Not everybody knows about the right clicking. You can also do it within your subfields.
That's been pretty helpful for me in 33X land, 336, 337, 338. I had no idea that the terms were there because that is a controlled vocabulary.
And it comes up in the A subfield. It doesn't come up in the twos. So sometimes it'll be there, sometimes it won't, but it's always, I personally have a tendency now right clicking all over the place trying to look for good lists and drop downs that are helpful when I'm bringing in new records. Any of the mentors, were there any particular drop downs on these that you wanted to point out to people?
Some of them are helpful up in the fixed field also, like country, for example. Since I doubt all of us have the country codes memorized off the top of our heads.
I'm trying to scroll up, but it wants, there we go. So you can also, so audience has drop downs, country, language. So all of these are really helpful. When you're looking at, when you're looking at those authorities down in the 655, 650s on these, I have it later in the agenda of 2 websites that were recommended that if these turn red, that can help you determine if they are accurate or if you need to change them at all. But we'll get to that down the road here.
Might also mention if you should need to add a field, when you go to add, you can right click to add, and it will give you a list of those fields as well. So I think if, Celine, if you go to the field numbers.
Over here on the left. Oh, yes.
And then if you're wanting to add, you can scroll down through that list as well. If you're just not quite remembering the exact number, this can be helpful as well.
I didn't know that one existed. That's good. So many little nuggets of gold in these. Just requires a lot of right clicking. Next on the agenda, there's an updated parts terminology that has been put on the SAGE page. By the way, the mentor committee has been doing a lot of work making sure all these resources and cheat sheets are updated for you. So they are a really, really good resource. And they should all be accurate now. So I'm looking for the parts here. Well, it's thinking. Okay, it's not opening. The parts terminology that was just added, the part that was changed, is there is a number 5 on this page now, and it's helpful for libraries that are doing splitting multi-disc DVDs into separate cases. And it's come to the attention that sometimes you might have multiple seasons within one case, and if that is the situation, you need to add episodes into your parts. So it could say something like disc 1 through 3, season 1, episodes 1 through 13, and then season 2, episodes 1 through 3 could all be in one item. So it's nothing that has to be used every time, but if you find yourself adding those multi-disc items, you can now specify which episodes and seasons are in each case. And again, that is helpful for placing holds so the patrons know which item they actually need to select. And I don't know why my computer won't pull this up right now, but it was updated on the cataloging webpage. Are there any?
I might just add to that.
Yes.
There was already on there, if someone's thinking episode sounds familiar, there was already a section about adding episodes. What this specifically one is adding seasons when it's appropriate to that as well. Because sometimes if there's multiple seasons within a bib record, you kind of need to be able to tell that on the holdings so that the patrons can more easily select what they're looking for.
Right. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, the second item on the parts terminology does have episodes, but you're right that it's the 5th one that adds the seasons into it if needed. And again, if you have any questions with the DVDs when you're adding these, or questions on how to do the parts, or if it looks like your item you're adding is going to bring in a little bit of confusion because another library's items doesn't have parts, all of those questions, please just refer to the cataloging mentors and they'll help you make the record nice and clean and clear for the patrons. And the mentor list is right here on this cataloging page also. They're very helpful. Any other questions about the parts, about that little change to parts terminology? Okay, go back to agenda. And the next is just a reminder, when you're importing records, please do multiple searches in the system before you import a new record from Z3950. I personally usually start with an ISBN and then I'll do a title and author search. Theoretically, the ISBN should pull everything up, but it doesn't always. I had one a couple weeks ago that did that. The ISBN never came up. I searched it a couple other ways, found that the record was already in the system. I don't know why that happened, but so just please do multiple searches so that we don't get duplicate records. And when you're doing those searches, be sure to search the whole SAGE system, not just at your library. Some of us use our same computer to be helping patrons as well as cataloging. So you're kind of flipping back and forth when you're looking at all of SAGE or not. There is a way to make your searches default to searching Sage from the beginning. Let's see if I can get this right here. If we go into, so this is just from the homepage of Sage. So say you're in I'm in my cataloging login here. If you go to administration and workstation, you can set here on the right, you can set your default search library to Sage. And that's just helpful. I know when I'm flipping back and forth, sometimes I'll have looked something up and I'm just at Cook Memorial Library and I do the next search for a book I'm getting ready to catalog and I forget to pop it to Sage. So it just depends on your work situation, but this is a helpful tool here. Some people have mentioned that when they're trying to catalog and help patrons simultaneously, which is tricky, they've opened 2 different browsers, so they can leave one open with their cataloging information, say on Firefox, and open a second up on Chrome, and that's what they're dealing with patrons, so they don't have to flip back and forth between their logins. But basically, the reminders is please always search all of Sage multiple ways before importing a record. Are there any questions or additional comments that anyone wants to make on that? Silence. Okay. I'm cranking right along today.
Nuts. Okay, back. I was sorry, I couldn't find my button. Back up to that screen, please.
Uh-huh.
The other thing I like, down at the bottom where it says Advanced Search Default pane, I set that one to numeric because then instead of going to the keyword Advanced Search screen, it takes you right to the ISBN. And again, depending on what your deals are, that just saves me a click.
Sure.
So, since we're going through the buttons.
Yep, absolutely. Anything else people have discovered that's helpful? Save a couple seconds and a little brain power. All right. Moving on in the agenda then. This is also a reminder. It's not new information. It's just to bring it up again in subject headings. Children's subject headings and adult subject headings are not necessarily interchangeable. And when you import a record, use that validate button that I showed you to see if the subject headings are correct. But then you also have to look up, they're not. There are 2 sites that you can look up your subject headings. This is the authorities.loc.gov site, and you can search your subjects headings here. And I wanted to show you an example. If I put dolphins in here, yes, because I was logged in earlier. There we go. Okay, so it shows Library of Congress subject headings, authorized. Go deeper into here, dolphins. You see it's subject heading, and they've used in the 650s. So to me, dolphin seems like a pretty basic standard subject heading, and I would initially think, well, I'm sure that would be a children's subject heading. But it's not. And it didn't show, it just showed, let me go back here. And you'll be able to see that because here it only says Library of Congress subject headings. This is what it would say, the one above it, where it says children's, it doesn't have a red authorized button. If you go into this page, id.loc.gov, and you search dolphins, to get to the children's, there are only 3 children's. There's spotted dolphins, dolphin family, and spinner dolphin. So you would have to change the subject heading. So it's just an example that you can't interchange one subject heading to another without looking it up. It's not necessarily logical, it just has to be looked up. And these are the two great sites for doing it. Under linked data service. Okay, so Library of Congress, if you click on linked data service when you get here, and you go down, you can search under subjects, thesauri, classifications. There's LC subject headings, and there's children's subject headings. This is how you get into these spots to do your searches. There's a drop down here also that you can use. You can search your genre form terms here. So when you're clicking that validate button and when you're importing records, this is where you can go in and check all of those and make any adjustments that you need to before you save the new record. Are there any things that people want to add, questions, anything I didn't make clear?
Heather has a note in the chat about greed versus avarice. I imagine that the LCSH term is avarice, and the children's term is greed. Maybe, I don't know. I hope they're not different. I would have a hard time visualizing avarice in the children's source, but
So greed is a children's subject heading. Oops. Oh, I have it on children. There we go. Nope. Because I'm in children's. So avarice is not coming up. So that's how you can find it. We can go into here. And right here you can see, so avarice is adult. And if you come down here, they put greed in for children's. So it's just really important that you spend a little extra time when you're importing those records to double check the 650s, the 655s, and make sure they're accurate. Any other comments or questions?
I had a question on if you click on that link and you don't find the subject, but you have researched it and its authority, and it is authorized by Library of Congress, do you add that to our authorities, or is that something that a mentor needs to do?
Beth, are you here?
I am. That would be something that would be picked up with authority control. Every month I get new authority records to add based upon new records that we've added to the system. So that should get handled that way. I don't mind if you send me an email saying, hey, this is a valid heading, but we don't have it in our authority file. Because sometimes I add those midway through the month, especially if it's a series. So send me an email and I'd be glad to do that. Otherwise, it'll be caught in the authority control that we do monthly.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right. Moving down the line here. Okay, audience fixed field. In general, adult items should have a blank in the audience fixed field. Let me go back here. Okay. Can everyone see those fixed fields all right?
Yes.
Okay. So this is what we're talking about. This audience in the fixed field, in general, adult items should have a blank, unknown or unspecified. However, if you're looking at an item such as a mature graphic novel, it'll probably have labeling on it that says that it is for mature audiences. In that case, you would use E for adult. Also, it's catalog or judgment. If you are looking through your item and you've read the description and flipped through it, or maybe you've personally read it before and you feel that it is specifically for adult patrons because of content, then you can use that E. And Beth will be able to describe this more, but what those fixed fields do is they change people's searches. So we want to have the majority of the items have the same fixed field so that when patrons do their searches, they come up. Right now, I don't believe that if you search, let's try it here. If you go into search, and we go down here, what this is changing is here, is this. So it only searches one at a time. And Beth, did you, if you could remind me, blank will bring up general, or did it bring up unknown?
I believe blank will bring up unknown. One of the things you could try, Celine, is to hold down the control button. I think you can select more than one audience for your search.
Let's try that. Oh, it will let you do that. However, I don't know how many patrons would know to do that.
Correct.
Yeah. So that would help us. Anyway, just to keep in mind to try to keep consistency through the catalog. In general, use that blank in the audience for adult items unless you feel there's something very specific in the content. It is strictly for the mature patrons.
Yeah, I think that leaving E to definitely be geared towards erotic and very mature content matter would help those patrons who want that particular type of material to search for it. If we have E in too many items, it's not really going to help either audience find what they're looking for if they narrow the search down by audience.
And that's something to look at when you're importing records that might need to be changed specifically for our use. The record that you're bringing in might have a different, might have an E in it and it needs to be made blank. So that's something to just double check when you're importing. Are there any questions? Does anyone need to discuss anything on that? Yes,
Celine,
John.
I had a related point while we're talking about audience and searching. On the other end of the spectrum, when you're searching for juvenile materials, you may want to consider doing that same type of control click. Don't just select juvenile, but you might want to consider control clicking several of the other juvenile categories, since juvenile doesn't encompass those categories when you're searching. So you may want to also highlight preschool and primary and or adolescent, depending on how wide you want your juvenile search to be. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. And I'm wondering, actually, I wonder if this will just let me go back. That brings up for my own information here. Oh, let me right click now. There we go. I'm just curious how, and I don't generally do the preschool, primary, pre-adolescent. I do, so middle grade novels. There's not a lot of consistency in those middle grade age ranges. We saw one the other day that was 9 to 17, which I'd never seen before. It's usually 9 to 11, 10 to 13. I've seen 8 to 14. I'm just curious when people are using pre-adolescent versus adolescent for middle grades.
If I might, Dia and I just had this conversation the other day. For the most part, unless it says specifically in the 521, I will go with just a plain old J. Obviously, unless it's young adult. It seems, because John just brought up a whole new thing when he says, go ahead and hold down the control and click 3 of them for your choices, so you can include the pre-adolescent, primary, preschool, and juvenile. So that just made a whole bunch of things go spinning in my head. But I tend to go with the juvenile. I very rarely use the pre-adolescent unless the most of the time it's the preschool and the primary, because it'll have the 521 or the reading levels like with our easies. Then I will choose preschool and primary. Honestly, if it's going to be pre-adolescent, I'm going to go with juvenile, just because I would think that the patron would see juvenile as I don't know. John brought up too many questions. But anyway, Dia and I, after we visited.
That's what I do, Lisa.
You're my man. I mean, you're the boss there. Sorry. I spent too much time on the sub-cataloging committee, and I am very comfortable with Mr. Brockman now, and I apologize. Anyhow, so your jokes are great. Yeah, anyway, Dia, her suggestion to me was, if it very clearly states in the 521 that age, go ahead and use your preschool primaries. Again, not considering young adult.
Well, and I just looked up too in the Bib Formats website. They do specify the age ranges for those. They are, these aren't just adolescent, I believe, looking at it was 14 to 17. Pre-adolescent is 9 to 13. If that helps people to know that there is a specific age range set for these, if you're not aware, that might be helpful as well. But like you found, Celine, sometimes items are all over the place, and that doesn't help.
Right, it's that middle grade, which I'm thinking would general would probably fall under the pre-adolescent, but and where we shelve, some of the middle grades are on the YA side and some are on the juvenile side, because we try to see which audience is going to read them, because there is that overlap in the age. So I don't know if that would affect people's searching. Any other comments on that, or what they've been doing? Anyone? Is there a sage preference besides making the 521 match the information in the fixed field? Catalog or judgment?
Well, it's always been told to me that when you catalog, age is not, and the audience is not necessarily something that you use catalog or judgment on for the most part. You want to take what's on the item, what the publisher puts or what the author puts, because otherwise you could be in a world of a fight with a parent or with a patron in general too. So that's how I was trained.
Right, of course. I know that in the young adult books don't always have, unless it's a manga or graphic, there's usually not a 521. I just look everything up in Ingram to make sure we're putting it in the right location. But I hadn't been as careful with those handful of middle grades. If I was cataloging them into the young adult collection because they fell within the adolescent age range, which 12 isn't overlapping, I would just use the D in the fixed field. That wasn't separating out those pre-adolescents as carefully, and using the Ingram where we order our books from for all the age checks before cataloging. So I take it if you can find the age information on the item or where you've ordered it from, to use that to help guide the fixed field, then does that sound accurate?
Yeah, I think the general guideline is to just be as objective as you possibly can. So if you can find support on the item for your audience choice, that's great. If there isn't any, if you can find support for it in other resources, like some that we've already mentioned, you may need to do some additional work to see if you can't find some. You're just trying to only be subjective when you absolutely have to.
Right, and I should clarify, when I was saying catalog or judgment, I was saying whether you would use the C or the D. Another good place I found for checking, since I do mostly YA and I do have to be very careful, is Barnes & Noble. And generally Barnes & Noble's age, publisher age recommendations match the match Ingram where we order our books. There have been a few discrepancies, but in general, those have overlapped well. So if for those that are doing adolescents, if you don't have access to Ingram, Barnes & Noble is another good resource for that. I usually give that to our parents and let them know that if they don't have time to pre-read the YA books, that they can pull them up on Barnes & Noble. And if it's a 12 to 17, it's generally lighter in content than the 14 to 17 that'll usually have heavier issues and more graphic content.
One of the things I was thinking about as we were having this conversation was whether if I can manipulate this fixed field description as to whether putting in the ages would help for the different categories like preschool, primary, pre-adolescent, adolescent. So if I can do that, is that something that we want?
And would that show on just on the workstation side, so the staff side, or would that also show in the filter grouping?
I'd have to
for patrons?
I'd have to change it in two different configurations, but I think I have the ability to change it in both. And so, yes, if you guys want me to look into that, I can see about adding that on both the staff side and on the public side.
I would think if you're going to add it one place, you'd want it both places. But I could see where it could be helpful for both. My personal opinion.
Okay.
And Dia, you said that the site you were looking at has age ranges specified for all of these?
Yes.
Oh, okay, then.
Yeah,
sounds
it's
like a good idea.
associative formats. I believe Mark 21 also has that, in their listing. The Library of Congress has that Mark 21 site. I believe that's also there too. I just quickly pulled up the other one.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and look into that unless there's any objection.
I think it would be helpful. More information is always better, especially for the patrons.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
Anything else on that topic? That was the end of the agenda we had. Anything that people have thought of in the meeting that they wanted to bring up? Comments, questions? All right. Short and sweet today. Next meeting will be Monday, August 2nd. And I will we'll have the minutes and the recording link of this posted up on the Sage site as soon as we can get that up for everybody. Just a reminder to those that were able to attend today, if you have coworkers that are cataloging, be helpful to pass this information on to them, or suggest they listen to the recording. And I've been very impressed with the minutes that have been taken for these meetings. They're very detailed, and just reading through those is a nice resource for people. So you just remind your coworkers that is there. We would appreciate it. Any last minute things to add? All right, guys, well, have a wonderful Monday for the rest of your Monday and a good week. And we'll be talking to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Celine.
You're welcome.